Hello students, welcome to your video on fractions, decimals, and percents for pre-algebra. We're going to do some work with equivalence. We're going to work on comparing values and ordering them. We have an Apple radio station called Studying Radio. Figured I'd give it a try. Let's jump right in and get started. Fractions, decimals, percents, oh my. We're dealing with 3 different ways to express the same value. Each form has its own uses and importance. Now, we're dealing with a concept lesson here. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we recognize that we're dealing with numbers that are the same value but are completely different formats. So that's what I want you to try to focus on as you learn about these. Fractions have uses like time signatures and beat length in music. Those of you who have learned music, whether you play piano or you sing, you know the difference between a half and a quarter note, and that is dealing with fractions. Definitely slicing pizza. It is my favorite food of all time. Converting a larger recipe to a smaller one or vice versa. I have to do that all the time in my house of only 3 people. Make the pancake recipe, for example, smaller, or we have way too many pancakes. Decimals have, of course, money. That's a big use of decimals. Everybody needs money, whether or not they like it. Grade point average, so your grades, when you average them together as a high school student, you'll have a grade point average. And that grade point average will tell you, prospective colleges, etc., how well you do in school. I mean, that's what it is. It's an average. It's a number. A 4.0 used to be perfect, but now you guys have heavily weighted classes. So that's something that you'll learn more about as you get to high school. Percentages. Percents are percentages. Loans, like mortgages, which is a home loan, is a mortgage, or a credit card, for example, has interest percentages. So the word really that's missing from that list is interest. So let's write it out here. Interest. Or when you buy something on sale. Definitely buying items on sale. That would be a use of percentages. Okay, let's look at equivalence. So I think these are all good ones to know. Now, I don't tell you to memorize. I want you to look through this with me. I want us to look at, starting off, actually not at the top, but I want to start off at this green row here. And the reason there's nothing written in this last one is that that's also a 1, because it's 1 over 1, or just 1. So 100% is a 1.0. Yeah, see, they could have done that. So 1.0, like that, or 1 as a fraction. And those are all equivalent. If you have 1 of something, you have 100% of it. So if it's cut into 1 part, you have 1 of 1 part. So you have a whole fraction there. And you can have fractions that get smaller, percents, decimals, fractions get smaller, and they get larger. So looking at the getting smaller, notice that as the percent is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so is the decimal. But it looks different because you see 50 and you think 50, but 50%, remember, is part of that 100. So percent means part of 100. So you're not looking at a number that's not really 99. So you can't say, oh, that's 99. You have to say 99%, because if you knock off the percent, it doesn't mean the same thing anymore. And then as you get above 100%, you can have more than 100%. You know of that in school as extra credit, for example. You could have a price go up 150%. So if something cost $10 and it went up 100%, it would now cost $20. If it went up 150%, it would now cost $25. Okay, so the percentages above 100 represent values above a whole thing, more than a whole thing. And as you can see there, 200%, that would be 2. Okay, so in this slide, we're going to go over how we change fractions to decimals, etc. Let's start with fractions to decimals. To change fractions to decimals, we're going to divide. So we're going to take the fraction that's given us, and you divide numerator divided by denominator, abbreviating for each one there. Let's actually go the other direction now, decimal to fraction. That's a 3-step process. 1, you're actually going to read the decimal using place value. So you can't say the word point. Okay, you read it using place value. Then you're going to write that number as a fraction. Write that number as a fraction. And then thirdly, you're going to take that fraction, you're going to simplify it. Now with decimals, percents, and fractions, decimals are kind of your middleman. It actually, fractions and decimals go nicely together. We're right in a second here, we're going to talk about percents and decimals, and they go nicely together. What does not really go nicely together, though, is fractions and percents. They really don't. So let's look at decimals to percents. In that circumstance, you're going to take the number in the decimal and you're going to multiply by 100. To go from percents to decimals, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to divide by 100. Now we're going to put this into action on the next slide with a couple of sample problems. Okay, we've got 3 sample problems. We've got a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some conversions. So let's start with 5/6. 5 divided by 6. So 6 doesn't go into 5, so we make it a 50 by making it 5.0. 8. Subtracting it a 2, bring down a 0, 20. 6 goes into 20 3 times, and that's 18. 3 times 6, 18. Subtract, you get a 2. Bring. Repeating decimal situation. Sorry. Yoink. So that's going to be another 3, and it will keep going. So 0.83 with the 3 repeating is the decimal. If we now change that to a percent, we have to take that 0.8333 ... and we have to multiply by 100. Notice that puts the decimal point between the first and the second 3. So now I have 83.333, etc. repeating percent, or 83.3 repeating percent. Let's take another repeating decimal. This time it's 0.3 repeating. We spoke briefly in class about how we would do this. To take that and change it to a fraction, you're going to write the 3 that repeats over 9 and then simplify. So that actually wasn't in our directions because we didn't have repeating decimal into fraction. So that one is a little different, and we will go over more of those in class. I'm glad that I put this example in here. If I also then want to change this 0.3 repeating into a percent, I'm going to think along the same lines of the previous example. Multiply by 100, 33.3 repeating percent. Okay. And the last one, 6.5%. 6.5%. How about we write it 6.5%? That might make it a little easier to think about how to convert it. And I kind of forgot that I was going to switch colors for each row. So we'll make that purple, cover up that green. 6.5%. So this time we're going to take that 6.5 and we're going to divide by 100 because that's what we do to go from percent to decimal. We're dividing by 100 because percents are part of 100. So it's like you're actually putting 6.5 over the number 100. And remember the fraction bar is really just division. All right, and that's 0.065. If I now want to change that into a fraction, I have to read it. That's 65 thousandths. 65 thousandths. Well, that's 65 over 1,000. If I now take that fraction, 65 over 1,000, and I divide both the numerator and denominator by 5, I'm going to get 13 over 200. And there you go. Now remember, we're thinking concept here. It's not a thrilling one, but it is important that we recognize what we're dealing with, fractions to decimals to percents. Placing values in order from least to greatest. All right, so later on we'll add in scientific notation to this mess, and we'll have that included, but we're not going to do that now. We're not going to torture ourselves with that now. So instead of the scientific notation example, I wrote an example in words because I thought that would actually be more useful. So what do I need to do here? I've got all of these different values, and we want to put them in order from, let's underline it so that we don't lose track of it, least to greatest. Well, right now, it's like comparing a list of first names with last names mixed in only, and then you're supposed to alphabetize. Well, do you alphabetize by first name or last name? Right now, I need them to change so they're all the same type of value. And the most convenient one is going to be decimals. So let's do the easy one first. 7/10 is 0.7. We should also be able to do 52%. So decimal point 2 places to the left, 0.52. Actually, that's not a good place for that because there's already a number right there. 0.52. And 10/11ths, 10/11ths, so that's 10 divided by 11. Oh boy. Okay, so 10 divided by 11 is going to give me 99 would be 9. That's a 1. Bring down a 0. Still not big enough. Bring down another 0. Oh, it's 100 again. Oh, I see. So it's going to be 909, and then it will keep going. So 0.9090. Okay, ... Least to greatest. Which one's smallest? Well, that would be our 0.45 would be the smallest. Because we look at the 10th place first. 5, 4, 7, and 9. So the 10th place we compare first. 0.45 would be the smallest. 52% would be next. Notice I'm not writing 0.52. I'm writing what it was originally because that's what they told us to put in order from least to greatest. 7/10 would be the next one, so I'll write it in my chicken scratch. 7/10. And finally, the last one would be 10/11ths. Okay, why don't you pause the video and try the next one, but remember, I will show you how to do it afterwards, so then turn it back on and check. All right, 1/8 would be 0.125, because I have done the division many times. Oh, another ad. Goodness gracious. Nope, we don't want to hear an ad from Progressive Auto Insurance, thank you. 0.11 for 11%, dividing by 100. We already had 0.172 for the next value. 3/20. 3/20. So 3 divided by 20. Let's take a look at this damage. How do we do here? So 3, not big enough. 3.0 makes it big enough to take out a 20. So 30. Take out a 20, you get 10. Let's see, can I turn the music back on now? Yes. Much better. Subtract, we get 10. Bring down a 0. And 20 goes into 100. Oh, 5 times. So that terminates nicely. So 0.15. All right. And let's put them in order from least to greatest here. So the least would be the 11%. Followed by the 1/8. Because everyone starts with a 1. A 1, 1, 1. Can't use the 1 to compare. Got to look at the next digit. 2, 1. This one's smallest. 7, 5. So 2, that's the next smallest. The 5 is the next smallest, so that's the 3/20. And then finally, the decimal that was given as a decimal, 172. And that just about wraps it up. That covers what we're going to be doing with fractions, decimals, and percents. That always seems to happen after I've paused it in the middle of a video. I'm going to see you guys in class, and we will practice with these skills. Remember, concept, concept, concept. Remembering to think about from goodness. Keep doing that. From 0 up to 1 is like from 0 up to 100%. Whether it's 1 or 1.0, same idea. That's what we're comparing here. All right, guys. I will see you in class.